Just a few days ago, we found out about the tragedy that happened on the set of the movie Rust with actor Alec Baldwin tragically killing Halyna Hutchins with a weapon on the set. Now, in the wake of that, there have been a lot of different revelations of concerns that had been raised on the set. Pretty much everyone involved in the process seems to have known on some level, and in some cases warned that terrible things were potentially in the works there. So I want to go through some of the evidence of this that's been raised in the past few days. The prop master, Neil Zamorowski, who's worked in the industry for 30 years, told the LA Times that he had a bad feeling following 4 days of meetings with the film's managers after he was asked to join the crew. He says there were massive red flags. He told the LA Times that the movie was prioritizing saving money over protecting people's safety and ultimately turned down the job. And in particular said this: after I pressed send on that last email, I felt in the pit of my stomach that is an accident waiting to happen. Now, you might think, okay, well, there was an accident, and so hindsight is 2020. There's always gonna be someone who is worried, but it very much seems to be a trend. There were concerns about the armor, for instance. 24-year-old armor in charge of safety, having to do with the firearms. Two production sources told the Daily Beast that filming on the set of her last movie was briefly stopped after she allegedly gave a gun to an 11-year-old actress without checking it properly. So I have no idea what the average age of an armor for is. It is entirely possible that a 24-year-old could be responsible with firearms and all of that. Seems a little bit dangerous. The fact that they'd already had an issue. Remember, like one of the concerns was that they were getting very willy-nilly about who was actually handing these guns. It is supposed to be the armorer checks it, hands it to the actor, takes it back from the actor and checks it. My wife actually has worked on sets where she has had to use guns. And that is the case. It's not being handed by anyone else, and you're not keeping the gun between takes and all of that stuff. It's very serious. And so when you have someone who already has a documented history of not complying with these standards, that is concerning. And so one of the sources says about this particular armor, she was a bit careless with the guns, waving it around every now and again, waving it around. There were a couple times she was loading the blanks and doing it in a fashion that we thought was unsafe. And again, none of this that I'm telling you right now is intended to say we know who was responsible. The picture it paints is that this was a set where safety, particularly around guns, was not foremost in their minds. And so there were a number of areas where the system really seems like it broke down. You have this post from the chief electrician saying professionals are the people who spent years on sets. They've done so much of this that they know it as a reflex. But it's still dangerous. And to save a dime, sometimes you hire people who are not fully qualified for the complicated and dangerous job, and you risk the lives of the other people who are close and your lives as well. I understand that you always fight for the budget, but you cannot allow that to happen. There should always be at least one professional in each department who knows the job. It is an absolute must to avoid such a tragedy like the tragedy with Halyna. You have an assistant director apparently handing Alec Baldwin the gun, had been fired from a previous job after a gun went off on a set and wounded a member of the film crew. That movie was called Freedom's Path. Dave Hollis was apparently fired just a couple of years ago after a crew member suffered a minor injury when a gun was unexpectedly discharged. The producer, who asked not to be identified by name, wrote that Halls was removed from the set immediately, and production did not resume until Halls was gone. So look, this is just a couple of days, and we're already learning so much about this. Some said that there had been a walkout, that Halyna in particular had raised concerns about safety. Now, some of this report, like it's difficult to track all the time whether all of this reporting ends up being confirmed. A lot of stuff gets spread in the wake of tragedies like this. But it is clear that there are significant concerns about many of the decisions that were made by the producers, by the managers of this film. And we will see in the end, there's certainly going to be civil lawsuits. Much will be discovered during that process. But it really does seem like this was already a tragedy. But if it's one that multiple people raised concerns about, if it's one that could have been avoided apparently so easily, it makes it even worse. And coming out of it, I don't know how much, what the silver lining can be, but one thing that some people are pushing for is to end real guns on sets. There's a petition, 23,000 signatures have already been applied to this. A California senator is vowing ammunition legislation we'll see if the petition does anything. We'll see if there's any sort of legislation specific to California, or obviously Atlanta has become a big filming place for these. But it really does seem at this point in 2021 that you can do it without the real ammunition. I feel like you make a lot of stuff happen without really doing it. That's kind of what films and TV are. I feel like you could do that. Years ago, I used to watch this YouTuber, Freddie Wong, I believe his name was, made amazing videos. They didn't use actual guns, but you really did think that they did. And those were YouTubers. I feel like Hollywood can figure it out. And sure, maybe it's one life a decade. Maybe to some that doesn't seem significant. To the family and friends of the person who dies needlessly, it seems like the most important thing in the world. I feel like we can move on from this. I feel like we have the technology.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.